I met Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with my friend Mike McKee, who runs Boston-based ObserveIT. Nice to see you, Mike.
Good to be back, Ed. I noticed the studio's gotten a lot larger since the last time I was here.
It's gotten a little bigger.
Congrats.
Yeah, maybe next time you come, we'll be like in a big amphitheater.
This will be good. You'll have to get makeup. I'll get makeup. It'll.
I don't think it'll help either.
It's not going to help. Yeah, exactly.
What are you gonna do?
Too late for that.
Hey, let's start with just a quick sentence about what you guys do,
Yep.
and then I want to hear a little bit about some of the things that you're seeing in the marketplace. But what does the company do?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. So, cybersecurity company, obviously
Yeah.
your area of expertise, looking at the world inside out. So, helping organizations decrease their insider threat risk by providing broad visibility on what people are doing so that organizations can ultimately protect their intellectual property and their people.
As if anybody actually had an insider threat. That happens never. Right? No.
Yes. No,
Actually, let's get into that. I mean,
Yeah.
I would think that the fact that you guys are doing insider means that you're probably dealing with executives at a different level, and they're probably dragging you in a little bit, right? Am I reading that right?
No, it's
How's
exactly
the
right. I mean, the
relationship
world's
going?
changing. There are more and more contractors, there are more and more millennials. People, much like this office here, being in a WeWork office,
Yeah.
are working in more different places. And as a result, leaders all the way up to the board are curious what those people are doing.
Yeah.
And all the studies around data breaches show that there's almost always someone on the inside that's involved in that data breach. And having the visibility to detect those early warning signs and quickly be able to investigate once an alert goes off is really important.
That must affect their strategy, right? Kind of as they plan new services, new initiatives, that whole insider thing becomes
Yeah, I think
a new
it's
dimension,
just,
right?
I think it's just a reality. I mean, a long time ago, or not that long ago, cybersecurity was all around the external threat. Put up a big firewall, stop the virus, the malware, the ransomware, you're all set. Now, I think people are realizing that they need to look inside out, and that because there's so many different people accessing information so many different ways, that they've got to understand what those people are doing and look at the world starting on the inside, not just putting up big walls to the outside.
Is it important for you and your team now to kind of really understand the businesses that you're supporting? It's not as transactional as, like when you and I first started talking, I always got the feeling that you'd been making that move from transactional to more of a partnership type business. But do you have to learn a little bit more about what, how your tool is interoperating with businesses? I would think that would be important.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think about people used to come for us, like you said, for transactional purposes,
right.
compliance, check a box, whatever it might be. Now it's a board level issue, and boards are asking and senior management teams are asking, do you know what your people are doing? Are they abiding by the security policies? Is our intellectual property safe? And as a result, it's really, really important to help executives answer that question, because no one wants to say, I don't know, as obvious as that sounds. But being able to figure out what happened really quickly is important. In the cybersecurity realm, there are too many alerts and not enough security professionals.
Yeah.
So what we try to do is provide that context around the alert, what happened before, what happened after, and then, like I said, the who was involved. And quite often organizations do have to start at a high level by figuring out where their assets, what intellectual property is most important, who has access to those assets, and then make sure they got visibility on that whole environment.
When you guys first started, I'm guessing you would do small populations, little pieces of a business unit, a group. I don't think that's the case anymore, is it?
It's not the case. It's a little intimidating at times.
Kind of everybody now.
It's kind of everybody. I mean, literally, I was at 2 banks in the last month. And in the past, they might start with their developers or their customer tech support folks or the customer care folks or an area that they were worried about. Now they want everybody. And that's literally the difference between starting at a couple thousand and going to 200,000. And they realize that they need to see what those 200,000 are doing, not just the 2,000 they think might be a risk.
Do you have to sort of adjust or kind of curate the culture of the corporation to deal with these bigger programs that because you guys are not a little startup anymore?
Yeah, no, we're not.
Big concern.
Yeah, to your point, and back to the point around engaging at the top levels of organizations, it is important from a culture perspective, and it is important that people realize that in many ways we protect privacy. We don't take privacy away because we allow organizations to know what happened, or our tagline, know the whole story. And as a result, they know what happened. They know that people are abiding by the rules and aren't doing bad things. But that's a culture. That's a culture change for some organizations and something that matters a lot. I mean, we deal a lot with West Coast, or increasingly with West Coast companies. And they have a little bit more of a lackadaisical culture. We trust our people. Everything's okay. And the idea of increasing the visibility around what people are doing, their first reaction is, geez, that's against our culture. But then they realize that their intellectual property is at risk. And if they don't have that visibility, then the business is at risk.
The idea of protecting the employee was always something I saw as just high value in any kind of behavior analytic process.
Yep.
Because the idea should be, as you said, we're not here to watch, we're here to protect you.
Correct.
Like you should feel like at work, you've got a veil of protection where maybe you don't have the same thing when you're hanging out on your laptop at Starbucks. So that always struck me as powerful message.
Yeah, one of our CSOs, I should say, this is back to getting higher in organizations. Yeah. More and more organizations have chief security officers. Yeah. And organizations realize that this involves HR, this involves legal, this involves physical security. It's not just an IT issue. But one of the CSOs who was at a recent customer advisory board talks about the rule of 1%, meaning 99% of people are good. But you need to know that quickly, and you need to be able to get through these investigations quickly, and I need to know that Ed's good and Mike's good and other people are good. But you do have to have that visibility if you want to make sure you know who that 1% that you're concerned about is. But 99% of people are good. That's fine.
So if your company's 100, you got one bad apple in there somewhere.
Well, it's funny. You just get people at different stages in their life with different motivations and around. So a lot of use cases around people onboarding, a lot of use cases around people offboarding, a lot of use cases around acquisitions, something you see a lot, bringing different companies together with different cultures. And it's in, much like life changes time, it's in company change points like that 1% can surface.
I've been doing this for so many decades. My observation is confusion leads to a lot of insider activity where it's not like this obvious malicious thing. They did something wrong. Yeah. But they went, oh, I didn't realize, and there's always this fog of, they took some software, they downloaded some stuff, and I thought it was okay. And it's been my observation, maybe because I'm a little too nice, but I've always thought the vast majority of those are not somebody trying to be like a total criminal. It's
I totally agree.
That's why I love having the control. Yeah, because then that solves that problem. Yeah. It's like, hey, listen, we got your back here. We're not going to let you go get yourself in trouble.
Well, I mean, I completely agree. It's mostly people just trying to get their job done. Yeah. And they're not trying to put the intellectual property of the organization at risk. They just are trying to get their job done, number one, and don't know all the security policies. Yeah. I mean, we joke that you don't tell your kids all the rules on January 1st and they abide by them. You tell your kids the rules when they break the rules. And similarly, in a lot of security awareness, companies have been doing well, and we partner with some of them, and we have some security awareness capabilities as well. But this whole idea of just make sure people know what the rules are at the time they're trying to get their job done is the best way to protect that intellectual property.
Do your customers tend to think of the work they're doing with you as an intelligence function? I know you and I chatted in the past about how maybe insider intelligence is becoming a new thing. Is that?
It is.
Am I reading that right?
It is. So two things. I mean, threat intel has typically been a term used for all the stuff that's happening in the dark web and all the different external threats. More and more people are realizing that intelligence they need is for what's going on in their organization. Yeah. And we've been providing a lot of that context and helping security teams know the whole story around alerts, not just coming from our solution, but other solutions as well. Because they'll see activity or they'll see an alert, but they won't know who was involved. So that idea of having an intelligence layer and being able to understand who was involved and what they were doing is very important.
That kind of bleeds your capability into a very powerful component in the enterprise. That data collection.
I love the marketing here. This is good.
That's really what's happening. And it's more just the whole space. I think even Gartner has started to acknowledge that this is an area that requires more attention.
Yeah. For a while, Gartner referred to it as UEBA, User and Entity Behavior Analytics. but boards aren't talking about UEBA,
Yeah,
and executive teams aren't talking about UEBA. Executives are talking about, understanding what their population is doing, and is there a threat on the inside that we need to worry about.
It's a bummer too when they use UEBA and all that stuff. Analysts like me, we got to use it because
Yes.
people say those terms, so we're forced into the vocabulary.
Yes.
But insiders, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. And the board wants to know, hey, do you know what your people are doing? Most of them are good, but do you know what they're all doing? And as I said earlier, with more and more contractors in the workforce, I mean, there's surveys out there that say that 40% of workers by 2022 will be project workers, and more.
What does that mean? That means they're not employees?
They're not employees.
40%?
40%.
Wow.
Yeah. So whether it's outsourcing IT or whether it's outsourcing design or whether it's outsourcing customer service, more and more organizations are leveraging contractors to do work. IDC.
Stuff. Wow.
I think it was 2022, 40% of workers will be project workers.
At the, I can go dig up the article, but you think it's more the workers want that, or the companies, or both?
I think it's the reality of today's
Just
world.
the way people do
Yeah,
things.
and then so my daughter is going to college next year.
Yeah.
At one of the admitted students day.
You give a plug for Middlebury.
All right, there you go, Middlebury College, excellent. The head of admissions said that by the time the kids in that room are 37, they'll have 10 to 14 jobs.
Oh, really?
We're going to show our age. We probably have had 10 to 14 jobs between us.
Well, I don't think the transition is tough, but I guess if you're a project worker, then you set yourself up accordingly.
Yeah, I mean,
both emotionally and also just the way you do your work.
No, exactly. And I mean, first of all, the infrastructure is there to work effectively in a remote capacity. And I think as a result, both people want to do that, meaning have more flexibility, do things they like, get away from things they don't like. And then as a result, that's what organizations have to rely on. Wow. So between millennials and project workers, you got more and more people accessing your intellectual property. And through all the different changes, the one constant is people, and making sure you have good visibility on those people is essential.
So I'm connecting the dots in my head. You guys are driving your technology toward that trend?
We are.
That's smart.
Yeah, we are.
Is that a big leap technically, or is it a nice, comfortable adjacency for what you do now?
Both. Meaning,
a little bit of work.
Yeah. I mean, you think about DevOps teams, and you think about where they're developing software and where we're developing our cloud platform. It's not on a server in our four walls.
Right.
And more organizations are having these DevOps teams develop applications for them.
People all over the place.
Exactly, knowing what they're doing. So we're constantly trying to broaden our visibility. I mean, historically it was servers and desktops, but more and more that's going to be the cloud, it's going to be mobile. And as I said, our mission is to help people know that whole story, which means we have to have as broad visibility as possible.
So insider becomes a function of time, meaning in the old days, insider meant you came in, you got a badge, you worked for 40 years, you're an insider for 4 decades. Now it could be you join a project team, you have access, and you work for 6 weeks, and then you go off. You're an insider for 6 weeks.
Exactly.
Am I reading that out?
Bingo.
That's a really interesting.
6 weeks.
Insider as a function of time. That's a really deep concept.
Yeah, for sure. And that's just the reality. That's the way people want to work. And that's
it sounds
the way
scarier, actually, because it's way harder to orchestrate all that. You don't know who's coming and going in a big complex organization.
Yeah.
Doing the forensics back on something 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Who was on that team?
Yeah.
Capturing all that intelligence would be the only way to unravel.
And back to the challenge of too many alerts and not enough people capable of doing forensics.
You're going to be as big as IBM in a few years with that. That's a really important problem.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Ed. It is a problem that's getting larger and that we're doing our best to help with.
Help me with the DLP versus, again, I'm using the Gartner thing, UBA, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But the behavior analytics kind of versus leakage kind of stuff. A lot of that's combined, and I think what you guys do, in some cases, you would argue kind of subsumes some of that. But what are the trends? Because probably a lot of people watching right now who think DLP, yes, I have a DLP solution. UBA, yes, I have a UBA solution. Where's all that going? Are they converging? Were they going in different directions?
I think it's converging by business use case. So the business use case is make sure intellectual property doesn't leave the organization. So for a long time on the DLP, data loss prevention side, they took a prevent approach. So I'm going to figure out which files I care the most about. I'm going to set up policies. I'm going to lock those files down.
Don't let you write to a USB. Don't push out through a gateway.
Through the web, whatever it might be.
A lot of people doing that now.
But the challenge is That changes. I mean, we're talking about new workers coming in every 6 weeks. That's changing every week.
Yeah.
And this idea of a prevent approach, that you know exactly what you need to lock down and who has access to what, it's just too tough in today's world. So more and more people are going to detect and respond. And I'm going to see everything. And as soon as something looks slightly abnormal, I'm going to respond, be able to dig in, figure out what happened very quickly to protect that property. I mean, much like, for a long time it was antivirus.
Yeah,
and then the whole EDR, once again, more acronyms here, but endpoint detection and response, replace this, lock down the wall with an antivirus because I know what all those viruses are. Well, people realize they can't know what all the viruses are right now, and there's different flavors coming every day. And as a result, from an external perspective, they need to be able to detect and respond very quickly. Similarly, on the internal side, this idea of having broad visibility, being able to detect and respond very quickly to abnormal behavior is important. As it pertains to analytics, sometimes we talk about real intelligence versus artificial intelligence, and we try to provide that real intelligence by the detailed view of what's happening. AI is important, analytics is important. Right now, we try to feed that as much as possible, and a lot of the UBA providers are now much more SIM 2.0, Security Information Event Management. The Securionics and Exabeams of the world are in the SIM Magic Quadrant, because I do think that there is a need for data lakes or repositories of information that you can run analytics against, and we're happy to feed that. And our goal is to have as broad visibility as possible and broad detection as possible. And if there's an analytics engine that's capturing data from all different security tools, we'll feed that.
So it's all open interfaces is the game.
It is, yeah.
You have to be able to
for
interoperate.
sure. I mean, we try to look at the world from the security professionals' perspective, and it's tough because they got more and more threats coming at them every day, and they have more and more solutions coming at them every day. So whether it be a SIM that we're feeding, or whether it be a SOAR, security orchestration and automated response system, we'll feed those as well. And then we'll interface with data classification systems that might tell you which files are good and which files are bad, to make sure we're running our alerts off those data classifications. So in my mind, it's all a question of, no pun intended, but playing well in the sandbox and making sure that you're working well with other tools.
The best thing to do, and now I'll sound a little pedantic, but I think to the degree that you can take a requirement like data leakage, inside or whatever, and have fewer tools, a more common, uniform approach to solving it, versus having umpty-ump different tools. They might all have open interfaces, but you start to look like a big Lincoln Logs thing where there's all this stuff connected. That's when problems happen, when you have all these connectors to this, to that. That was always my issue with the early SIMs. They'd say, look, I have this thing, and just this porcupine picture of connectors to everything. I always thought, well, it's awesome, you have to do that because it's reflective of bad architecture, so you need that. But I like that even the SIM providers recognize that it has to be simpler. Everything has to simplify because it's already too complicated. It's simpler. For sure.
And it's not just saying it's not just establishing those connectors, but it's maintaining those connectors. And that's a lot of overhead and a lot of work. Fortunately with the cloud now, there's a lot of standards that are out there, and there's an ability to build the software in a way that it's easy to plug in to the other solutions, and that's something we work very hard to do. To try to keep it as simple as possible and try to help people know what's going on.
Your company's growing, aren't you?
We are, yes. Hiring in multiple places. Hiring in Boston, hiring in San Francisco, hiring in London.
Wow.
Singapore, Australia, Tel Aviv, where the company has a big office as well. So we're trying to tap into the different cybersecurity hubs that are out there.
You fly around all those places? And
I do, yes, I do. Yes, definitely.
The life of the CEO.
Yeah, for the first time ever, our 4 kids are going to be away at camp together. So my wife and I have 3 weeks without kids on my normal trip to Tel Aviv. She's going to come with me.
That's great.
Which would be kind of nice. And she's been over there once before because there's
beautiful beaches.
Beautiful city. And very different than everyone thinks. Touchwood, very safe, very nice, and obviously phenomenal technical talent over there, which goes well with the talent that we have headquartered here in Boston. So it's a nice mix. You
optimistic about cybersecurity in general in the next 5 to 10 years? Some people are fatalistic. Some are pessimistic. I always find CEOs to be optimistic, but where do you kind of live in that spectrum?
Yeah, no, I do. I think I remember you asking this about a year ago. I mean, on the one hand, you have to have it, and it's a risk you have to cover. But I think it is I think people are realizing, to your point earlier, it's got to be simpler.
Yeah.
And they're realizing this whole, I think, UX, user experience revolution across all of business software, the consumerization of business software. Mm-hmm. You know, business software with lots of tables and confusing charts and like, that doesn't work. It's got to be simple. And you've got to be able to provide the information to the business user in an easy, understandable way. So I think business software companies are getting a lot better, to include cybersecurity companies, at helping solve those problems more simply. So yeah, I am optimistic about it.
Enjoying your day in New York City? You brought nice weather today.
Love New York City, yeah. Got a bunch of meetings, and then hopefully catch my brother for dinner on the way up before I get back on the train and head back to Boston.
Well, dude, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
It was great to see you.
Yeah, no, really
Come
appreciate
back
having you back
with us.
I will, for sure.
Great, and we will see you next time.